Hello. This presentation analyzes Kerzner's The New CIO case. The case is not simply about a new technology leader coming into a conservative company. It is about what happens when a company waits too long to modernize how it manages projects, information systems, risk, and executive decision making. Rose Industries had survived for decades through internal promotion and low-cost manufacturing, but that same tradition had become a barrier. The presentation answers the case questions and connects them to project management maturity, PMO implementation, organizational culture, and executive support. The facts of the case show a company that has become comfortable with its own habits. Rose promoted from within, discouraged outside education, and relied on internal training that prepared employees only for the next pay grade. That may have felt stable. It may have even worked for years, but by 2003, the same habits were hurting growth. Competitors were using Rose's weak project management capability against it. That matters because project management maturity and organizational culture are linked to perceived performance and competitiveness. Question 1. Why was PM implementation difficult before John? It was difficult for Rose Industries to implement project management because the company had never made project management part of its identity. It had a few templates, but templates are not maturity. The deeper issue was that executives did not lead the way. They waited until customers and competitors forced the conversation. That is reactive, not strategic. The case also shows weak communication, low trust, limited external learning, and no real systems discipline. Young and Jordan found top management support to be essential for project success, and Yazuchu connects project management maturity and culture to performance. Rose lacked both. Question 2. Can inbreeding be detrimental to PM maturity? Yes, the closed promotion culture could hurt project management maturity. Internal promotion is not automatically bad. It can preserve institutional knowledge and loyalty, but Rose took it too far. The company discouraged outside seminars, outside degrees, and outside professional development. So people learned the Rose way and only the Rose way. That creates a closed loop. Project management maturity requires more than seniority. It requires deliberate capability building, benchmarking, and organizational learning. Jugdev and Thomas warned that maturity models alone do not create competitive advantage unless the organization develops real capabilities. Rose had history, but no renewal. Question 3. How long to reach reasonable PM maturity without John? Assuming John was not there, Rose might need 3 to 5 years to see reasonable project management maturity. And honestly, that may be optimistic. The company was starting from a very low base, no formal methodology, outdated information systems, poor communication, and executive resistance. Without top management support, maturity work can turn into paper exercises. Young and Jordan argue that top management support is not just helpful, it is central to project success. Jugdev and Thomas also make clear that maturity must become an organizational capability, not just a checklist. Question 4. Can interviews reveal the true challenge? It is possible to learn some of the real job challenges during interviews, but not all of them. Interviews are staged environments. People soften the truth. They say support will be there. they do not always mention the politics, the informal power networks, or the executives who will quietly block the work. John should have asked harder, more operational questions. What authority comes with the role? What funding is approved? Which executives are already aligned? What will the CEO do publicly if resistance appears? Since top management support is a critical success factor, promises should have been tied to decisions, budgets, and visible executive behavior. Question 5. How do you know support promises will be kept? There is no perfect way to know whether promises will be kept, but a leader can test the promise. Real support has evidence. It has budget, authority, a signed mandate, named sponsors, and a decision process. In Rose's case, John believed support would appear, but the first executive meeting showed otherwise. That is the lesson. Executive support should be validated before a major change effort begins. Young and Jordan found top management support to be the most important critical success factor for project success. Aubrey, Hobbs, and Twyer also show that PMOs operate inside organizational history, tensions, and power structures. Question 6. Was John correct about the 4 components of PM culture? John was correct that communications, cooperation, teamwork, and trust are essential parts of a good project management culture. They are simple words, but they are not small things. Rose lacked them. People cooperated only when they saw personal benefit. Communication was weak because the information systems were weak. Trust was low. That is not a good foundation for enterprise project management. However, John's list needed 3 additions: executive sponsorship, organizational learning, and accountability. Yazuchu shows that culture and project management maturity work together, and Young and Jordan make the importance of executive support very clear. Question 7. Was John too optimistic with the 4-step approach? John's 4-step approach was not wrong in substance. Rose did need project management capability, systems development discipline, PMO support, and portfolio level thinking, but he was too optimistic about how fast a resistance culture would accept those changes. He entered with a strong technical solution before enough political groundwork had been built. PMOs are not just organizational boxes. They exist inside social and political systems. Aubrey and the others describe the PMOs as connected to organizational context and evolving tensions. That fits Rose exactly. John's plan was logical, but the rollout was too abrupt for that culture. Question 8. Why were the executives threatened? The other executives were threatened because John's plan redistributed influence. PMOs can create transparency around schedules, resources, risks, and project selection. That sounds positive. It is positive. But to executives who are used to controlling information inside their own areas, transparency can feel like a loss of power. John also challenged the long-standing belief that portfolio selection and risk decisions belong only to executives. The reaction in the case was emotional because the threat was not merely technical. It touched authority, bonuses, status, and identity. Question 9. If John stayed, how should he change the approach? If John had stayed, he should have changed the approach from a top-down redesign to a staged transformation. First, he needed the CEO to make the sponsorship public and specific. Second, he should have started with pilot projects instead of presenting two PMOs at once. Third, he should have developed internal champions because Rose respected insiders more than outsiders. Fourth, the first PMO should have been lean and supportive, not framed as a control center. Finally, John needed business evidence. If he could show that project discipline improved customer response, reduced rework, or supported revenue, resistance might soften. Question 10. Was John correct in resigning? John was probably correct to resign if he believed the CEO would not protect the change effort. A CIO cannot transform project management culture by force, especially when every major part of the plan is rejected by peer executives. From a career standpoint, he did not want to own a failure he could not control. That is understandable. Still, he may have resigned before exhausting all options. He could have requested a direct CEO mandate, proposed a pilot, or reframed the plan as a revenue protection effort. But the core point remains. Without executive support, his chance of success was small. Question 11. Prognosis for Rose Industries. My prognosis is guarded. Rose is not automatically doomed, but its current trajectory is dangerous. Low-cost manufacturing is no longer enough if customers see the company as weak in project delivery. Competitors are already using project management capability as a selling point. If Rose keeps treating project management as optional, sales would likely continue to decline. However, if the CEO steps in, sponsors a lean PMO, invests in training, modernizes information systems, and builds a practical methodology, the company can recover. Maturity can support competitiveness, but only when it becomes a real capability. The case ends with John resigning. But the more important question is what Rose learns from that resignation. Project management implementation is not just a CIO responsibility, it is an executive responsibility. Methodologies, PMOs, training programs, systems development practices, and portfolio processes can all help. But none of those tools will survive if leadership does not model the change. Rose's future depends on whether executives can stop defending old power structures and start building organizational capability. That is the real test of maturity. Here is a list of the references utilized to complete the assignment. References continued.